Hello there. Thank you for joining me. I'm Della Rucker. I am the principal of the Wise Economy Workshop and author of the recent book, The Local Economy Revolution Has Arrived, What's Changed and How You Can Help. So it is a Monday. It is unquestionably a Monday. I am already behind. So I actually skipped the video on Friday because I had my my second vaccine, about which I was super excited. But then, I got some of the ill after effects, and wouldn't have been a big deal, except that I also had about 300 things due. Great timing on my part. Interestingly, my husband saw what was going on with me. His shot was 2 days later. He talked to everybody he knew to try to figure out how to deal with this thing better. And he went on a regimen of vitamin C, Tylenol, Advil at certain intervals and certain numbers of pills and blah, 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 blah. Had very little side effect at all. Dork. Never fails that the engineer figures out how to solve the problem, right? So I lost Friday, and excuse me. I am a very happily vaccinated person, but I am now behind on everything. So sometimes that's kind of the way it works, right? So today has been really fascinating, though. We have had, I've had several good conversations about upstream things that I've talked about here before. One of them had, excuse me, let me grab my water. Slightly out of frame. One of them had to do with Trep House, which is a platform for accelerating entrepreneurship and scalability for people who are what we call new majority founders, typically African American, African diaspora, other minority, and younger. So millennial and Gen Z, typically, although once in a blue moon I'll let someone like me in. So that's been fascinating work, and you'll be hearing more and more about that in the near future. I've also, I'll give you a little bit of a peek at it. I've got a wall of, you might have seen this in videos before. I've got a wall that I use to try to do strategic planning. After this point in time, after having worked on these things for so long, I've got 100 things that I could be doing stuff with. So that's books, that's writing, that's various social media platforms, it's relationships, it's organizations, all sorts of things. And a lot of times the big question to me is just, what should I be leveraging right now? What should I be using or improving right now? And well, who do I have to get involved in order to actually get that done? Because I'm a one-person shop and only so many hours in a day. And then when you get knocked down with like feeling like crap for a day, it just kind of throws everything off. So we're trying to do kind of figuring out what the next big project should be. And in the meantime, there's no shortage of other projects. So that's kind of where things are today. I hope your projects and initiatives are going well as well. Instead of reading from The Local Economy Revolution Has Arrived today, I thought we'd talk about the intersection between two of the first principles and why that intersection is so important, and why it's so important that I actually wrote another book about it that's called Crowdsourcing Wisdom. So one of the things that percolated up as one of these first principles very early on was that if we are going to get to that future-ready economy, if we're going to be able to capitalize on the benefits of the fusion economy, then what that means is that instead of our ability to move stuff and make stuff and change stuff and work on a machine, instead of that being important, and this is not rocket science, right? This is, you've been reading this everywhere. our ability to leverage our brains, and particularly our creativity, our human creative potential becomes the most important, the most economically valuable thing that we have to offer. That's why we talk now about a knowledge economy and knowledge economy workers. But here's the challenge. Right now, we enable, permit, teach, train, reinforce only a small percentage of our population to be able to be those creators, those innovators, those masters of the new. And 9 times out of 10, those people kind of look like me. Maybe they're not redheaded, but you know what I mean. And they're more likely to be male than to be female. And there's lots of, moral reasons we could go into as to why that's problematic. But the piece that I have come to emphasize a lot over the last many years is what I think of as a very, very practical component of that reality, which is that if we don't have the full diversity of human experience creating innovation, bringing their skills and their insights to the table to make the new things that we need, the new insights, the new products, the new businesses, then we're fighting for this economic future. You can't see my arms this way, but we're fighting with our arms tied behind our back. We're missing out on a huge amount of the potential that we need. This isn't just about being nice. This is about what we need. We need new ways to solve 100 challenges. Pick one, it'll work. And chances are there's been people who've looked more or less like me who've been trying to solve them and still not solved. One of the best ways that I know of to get an innovative solution is to engage people in the process who are not the usual suspects. And we see this over and over again, where we have people who are breaking scientific paradigms, people who come up with truly groundbreaking solutions, very often are not the people who have a PhD in that given discipline. Instead, they tend to be people who are coming in from somewhere else. Now, we have thousands, millions of people who are living experiences that aren't the same as mine and probably aren't the same as yours. And they see and hear and perceive and can identify solutions the chances are we would miss. And so how do we unlock that potential? And I would argue that if we don't, we got some big problems, because what's the old definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. There's only so many ways that someone like me knows how to do it. So at some point, we need people who are coming from a profoundly, and I would say the more different the perspective, then better. So I wrote a book a few years ago. So take a step back. So this book, and I don't have the other one at hand. I thought I had a copy of it, and I don't know where it went. This book includes as one of its first principles the idea of crowdsourcing wisdom. Now, that's a strange term. Crowdsourcing is something that we're more familiar with now than we were when I wrote the first version of that book 10 years ago, 8 years ago. Crowdsourcing is when you literally do what it describes. You draw ideas, insights, solutions, inspirations from the crowd instead of just from individuals or people who are within our comfortable circle. Crowdsourcing wisdom for me was about something that takes that idea of crowdsourcing. We can crowdsource t-shirt designs. We can crowdsource mugs. If you look at Redbubble or Threadless, those are consumer sites that are crowdsourced. When we need to figure out how to solve problems in our communities or unpack new opportunities in our communities, very often we go back to the same, kind of sanctum sanctorum of experts who very often look at least somewhat like me. And we say they're going to be the ones who have the skills, the expertise, the letters after their name, etc., to solve the problem. Crowdsourcing wisdom is a concept that says that we have a role to play. We who are experts have a role to play, but we're not the only role and we're not the most important role. And what we have to have in the process is that wider range, that full diversity of human experience, insight, perspective, etc. However, what I see happen over and over again is a ping pong between two different approaches. One is the approach that says, oh, we need to know what the public thinks. And I don't care whether you're a government or you're a business or what. To a great extent, it's fundamentally the same process. But we say, oh, we need to know what the public thinks. So we have some kind of situation where we're going to listen to what the public thinks. And maybe we will just give them something and ask for their feedback. And they may like it, they may complain about it. And we sit and we listen and we go, uh-huh. Or sometimes we make the question a little more broad. And we say, what would you like? Now, my background is in urban planning. So I worked on plans for cities and townships and governments of all types for a long time. So my context for that is almost always a public meeting where very typically we say, what would you like to see in the future of your community? What do you think should be built here or there or somewhere else? And then we sit back and we listen and we hear all sorts of things. I used to always make the joke that what we would end up with that second scenario was a Santa Claus list. I want a puppy and a kitten and a rocket launcher and a bag of Fritos. And could you send my little brother back, please? The kinds of questions that a little kid would, or the kind of responses rather, that a little kid might make sitting on Santa's lap at Christmas time. And I think those are incredibly damaging for more than one reason. But probably the biggest reason is that we ask them, what would you like? And they say back to us, puppy, kitten, and rocket launcher. And then when they get none of those at the end of the process, whatever's in the plan certainly didn't include a rocket launcher, then they sit back, and even if they don't say it out loud to us, they sit back and they say, now, wait a minute. I wanted a rocket launcher. Where's the rocket launcher? You know what? When they asked me what I really thought or what I really wanted, they didn't mean it. They were just telling me what I wanted to hear. They were just, playing that hypocritical thing that government people slash big businesses slash fill in your blank. They were just playing that game where they pretend that they care what we think. They didn't really care what we think. And then, why do we wonder that people don't trust us? That people don't believe us? That when there's a conflict, when people are scared about the future of their community and whether their needs are going to be met, and we say, oh yes, of course they will, of course they will. Is it any wonder that they then go, yeah, sure. I remember. I think you're full of it. It's no surprise at all. We did it to ourselves. We created that environment. Crowdsourcing wisdom is about co-creating that meaning, co-creating that future with people who don't have letters after their names, don't have degrees, don't have, ages upon ages of expertise in thing X, Y, or Z. But that's the only way we're going to build a trust. Now, just because we're opening up the process, though, doesn't mean that we, sort of throw everything open and say, okay, well, we'll do whatever you want. Obviously, that's not realistic either. And that puts us right back in that situation of when we can't do everything they want, looking like we've pulled a scam on them. So instead, the concept of crowdsourcing wisdom is to set very realistic parameters and to be very transparent about what those parameters are. Okay, here's the environment. Here's the things that the federal government will not allow us to do. Here's the things that our local government says are acceptable. Here's the context. Here's what the economics look like. And we often leave out economics because we think, oh, it's numbers, it's going to scare people. Bad idea. Because the economics make such a huge impact. But then within those very realistic, very honest, very transparent parameters to say, okay, this is the real world environment we've got to solve this problem in. How do you think we should do it? And engage them. And put their expertise and their insight up next to and in partnership with that of our experts. And what I will tell you from decades, 2 decades of having done this and having gradually learned how to do this better and better over many years is that when we do it well, we get objectively better results. We get less conflict. We get less unintended consequences. We get fewer unseen problems or difficulties. We get fewer people coming out of the woodwork to say, no, you got that wrong. It makes the whole process better. And all it's required of us is to, first of all, lower our ego a few notches and say we are not the only keepers of wisdom and insight. And number 2, to create an environment in which people can work within the real world. And we trust them with the real world. And we trust them with helping us to define that reality. That's why crowdsourcing wisdom is so important in this fusion era economy. Because chances are, if we're dealing with a tough problem, either it's new and our previous expertise isn't going to necessarily help us identify a solution, or we've been using the conventional wisdom for years, and it ain't worked. We need something new. In either case, in an uncertain, volatile environment, one of the best places that we can look for new ideas and new insight is to people who've been there all along but haven't been part of that conversation. That's why crowdsourcing wisdom is so important. And that's why it's one of the first principles in local economy revolution has arrived. So if you are interested, and if that sounds like something that you'd like to hear and learn more about, take a look at this book. You can find it any place where you get your books, especially to order your books. It's not in a ton of bookstores. It's, bookstores don't carry a whole lot other than, Tom Clancy sometimes anymore. But you can order this through any bookstore. You can order it particularly at gumroad.com, lulu.com, or amazon.com if you prefer to use Amazon. Again, the title is The Local Economy Revolution Has Arrived, What's Changed, and How You Can Help. There's a version, a short shot, which is a short publication, 20 pages, that focuses just on the first principles. That's available at wiseeconomy.com. And if this all sounds good, but you really, really, really are interested in how to make these kind of changes and these kind of transitions happen in the community that you live and work and care about, in whatever form you do it today, then chances are you will get a lot of benefit from subscribing to my Substack, which is wiseeconomy.substack.com. Again, wiseeconomy.substack.com. For a very inexpensive sign-up, you get a weekly newsletter that gives you analysis and insight into articles and news stories about how this is playing out in the real world, things that you probably missed in your own perusals. In addition to that, you get access to the upcoming Accelerate Us Salon series, the Accelerate Us Journal that will be coming out later in May, and a few other things as well. So thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate your listening. And as I always tell you, go get them.